Hi everyone, we are going to start again and we are talking about the consumption and leisure model, and in this particular model we talked in two sessions about the basic foundations of macroeconomic foundations of so we talked about the microeconomic foundations of macroeconomics, and now we are trying to see, we already have defined the representative consumer, representative agent, different characteristics. We characterize the representative consumer. We also defined the budget constraint. We also had the consumer uh, optimization, the optimal level of consumption and leisure. Now we will be looking from the labor supply side, that how the labor supply function of the representative consumers looks like. And in the last session we also talked about, so the reference book the references remain same even for this session. So you have to go through, you can choose any of these books and go through, but I would recommend that you should read Stephen D. Williamson. This is going to be the major reference for this lecture. So here what we are talking about is the, so we had seen about this particular part, that what happens when we have the increase in wage rate. Then we saw that the increase in wage rate has a direct impact on the consumption, but leisure, it is not very certain that whether it will rise or fall. So those things. Now we are talking about the labor supply. So when we say that labor supply, so labor supply shows about the supply of labor that representative agent supplies at the given wage rate, which means that the wage rate is decided by the factor market and also decided by the marginal productivity of labor. So if the marginal productivity of labor is higher, the wage rate is expected to go up because there will be a lot of demand for the labor, but if it is lower, then the wage rate comes down. So that framework will be applying. So when we set up the microeconomic model, so you have to keep in mind that when you are defining your agent, in our setup it may look very simple and straightforward, but in real life if you work with your own model, when you try to work out, then you find that when you are defining representative agent or representative consumer or the consumer, then you have to think about the modeling framework, the basic model that you are assuming, that whether this particular guy is going to have the Cobb-Douglas based kind of utility function or any kind of CRRA kind of utility function. So those things you have to keep in mind when you are having interaction with the between the consumer and the firm. Then you have to bring in the labor supply idea into account. So here you have to labor supply specification. So here you have the labor supply. So NS that we have assumed, it is having the real wage rate, and it is again the number of hours available minus the leisure component that we have. It is also linked to the wage rate. If wage rate is higher, it is expected that leisure component. So here it is. Now here we have the labor supply. So here this is looking like, and this will have upward slope, because as the real wage will increase, the employment will increase, because it is expected that it should have, but after some certain point of time it will also have the backward bending kind of scenario, and backward bending typically happens when you have the income and substitution effects playing very important role. So when I mention about the real wage and the employment, so this goes in this way, right? Now in what all scenarios, if you think about the comparative statics that we are talking about, in what scenarios this moves leftward. So labor supply, what are the components that can affect the labor supply is that there should not be sudden increase in income of the representative consumer. There should not be tax decline. If government is saying that because of some reasons we will not be charging you tax, it means that this amount of extra money the consumer is going to have. So this will also have the interfering effect on the labor supply. So those dimensions we have to take into account. So here we have the real wage and here we have the employment. So when you have the increase in profit or the dividend or decrease in taxes, then you have the leftward shift, and rightward shift when it is just working against. So those things we have to keep in mind. Now Here we have the H minus LW, which means the total number of hours worked. So as I told that this may be looking like a very straightforward case, that it is having positive trend, and same way that we have in economics the supply curve, supply line that we always mention, the upward sloping. But after certain point of time, as I mentioned, that you may have the backward bending. So this may turn this way, this may go like this. So if you have that kind of situation in which all conditions it arises, so here it is. So the labor supply curve is backward bending, because at high wage rate, high wage levels, the amounts of hours worked declines. So in many of the countries you have the situations where the number of working days in a week is getting down, it is getting lowered, and now you have to work only for 4 days, 5 days. So those aspects you can link it here. Now when wage is low, the substitution effect outweighs the income effect, right. This is also, once you have the substitution effect, in the sense we saw it here, right. There was also the decrease in your leisure. Now if it is leading to decrease in leisure, then this is also having some kind of impact on your consumption pattern also. So this is how it mentions about. So labor supply will have always the trending scenario, because the wage rate, this particular guy is going to work at very high level of nominal after tax wage. The income effect ought to outweigh the substitution effect, and as a result the supply curve will show the negative, which means that it will start bending back. Now at the intermediate level of at the intermediate levels, the nominal tax wage, the substitution effect roughly cancel out the income effect, which means that there will be some kind of mitigation here, giving the labor supply curve its vertical origin. So here it goes like this. So it will have such type of trend. So it will start like this, it will go straight, and then it will turn like this. So that kind of, I am talking about this shape, that how it is looking like. From here it is the lower wage, from here it is constant, and from here it is a downward sloping. So here it becomes the same way, which means that the if income effect is reinforcing on substitution effect, is more or less clear that both are moving in the same direction. But when you have difference, then there you have the role of all this, that what is the wage rate at that level, that will decide about the magnitude. So the income effect is reinforcing, that we can see here, that when you have at very high level, you have the income effect outweighing, which means that this particular guy would like to spend some more time thinking about, so more of leisure, less of work. At this level, when substitution effect is cancelling out I, then it means that both are on the same path. And then here we have the substitution effect outweigh, which means that this particular guy would like to substitute more of consumption over leisure. So he would be working here. Now, so this was from the representative consumer side. So sometime we defined the representative consumer as an consumer, and we superimpose the idea of consumption, consumer behavior, I would say. So for this particular part, you can refer any textbook in micro, that will be sufficient for you to understand these very rudimentary ideas on, or rudimentary techniques to understand the production, labor supply, then the consumption. So I think even the Hall-Arverian intermediate will be more than intermediate macroeconomics will be more than sufficient. Now the production function. Once I go for production function, then the ultimate objective of a firm is that it has the profit maximization objective. What is that objective? So when I say that we have profit maximization, and then it talks about y is equal to z fkn, and z is nothing but, this talks about the, this is the constant term, but this talks about the level of productivity, that how this particular function, these two factors, at what rate it is going to contribute to output. So this is the important factor model. Now you must be knowing that if you have done the basic economics, then you must be knowing that a constant return to a scale, when you have the increase in input, and this increase in input is also leading, at whatever rate these inputs are increased, it is also transforming or leading to increase by the same rate of output. So, that is also, so it talks about the homogeneous function that we have, that if you superimpose any lambda parameter to any function. So, if you just take out that lambda. So, lambda decides the magnitude or degree of the scale of increment in the function. So, that we talk about. The output increases with increase in either the labor input or capital input. So, this is the normal production function we have. The marginal product of labor decreases as the labor input increases. So, it is the very common thing that when we have the, so marginal product is nothing but additional increase in output due to increase in 1 unit of labor that we say. So, whatever additional output that we have that you are seeing due to increase in the increment of 1 labor. So, if you are continuously increasing the labor. So, in the beginning when you added 1 to 2, then it helped you to augment the output, but when you go for continuously adding, then after some time the change in output will decline. So, you will not have the same growth. So, maybe earlier you hired only 1 person, this 1 person you added 1 more. So, earlier this person was producing 4. So, now you started producing 8. After third labor you hired 1 more, then they started producing 12, but again you hired 1 more, then it may not be leading to 16, it may be coming to 15 or 13. So, that is the case, that sometime if you go for continuously increasing, then that becomes a burden. In case of India, the typical exercise that we always say in the case of agriculture sector, that you have more labor and this leads to a problem, and productivity of the agriculture sector is always questioned for that reason. Now, marginal product of capital decreases as the capital input increases. When I say marginal product of capital decreases as the capital input increases, in the sense that if you are having 1 machine and you are producing some output, you go on adding in the same way that I mentioned about the labor, it will also have the similar reactions. Marginal product of labor increases as the quantity of capital increases. This is a good exercise, that earlier you were using machinery in a very less amount, more of labor. So, labor used to take more time to produce one output. The moment you increase capital, you bring machinery. So, you have certain level of automations at the very basic level. So, this labor finds it very useful, and then this augments the production process. So, better technology, better I would say production system increases the efficiency or enhances the efficiency in the production process. And one labor, earlier he used to produce only 10, but because of machinery he is producing 500 output. So, that is the underlying idea. So, if you have better machinery, better tools, then this helps the marginal product of labor to increase. Now, here we define the profit function, which is pi. It is nothing but ZFK ND, which is the demand for labor, minus WND. So, this is the amount of income, or this is the labor share. So, this is the amount that the labor is receiving. This is the productivity factor, and this is the demand for labor, and this is the capital that this particular guy is having, this representative agent is having, and here WND is the total cost of the labor input. When the firm maximizes profits, marginal product of labor equals wage rate, and this is what it tells about. So, the moment you have the scenario, so maybe here it can be looked at point A, that how it is moving, and here also you can think about. So, this is the marginal product of labor. The moment you have the scenarios where you have the marginal product of labor is equal to real wage. So, here you have the MPN is equal to W, and this MPN is having a lot of meaning here, and this is how it looks like. So, this is the production process, this is the here you have the labor demand. On top of this, whatever line you superimpose, so at point A, this particular representative agent will be just thinking about how much cost it incurs and how much labor he has to ask. So, this will be the labor input or labor demand coming from the firm. So, this is what we try to cover in this. Now, once I have defined this particular part, so what is critical in the case of representative firm, that he has the well defined production function, he has the profit making objectives. So, profit making objectives are here pi is equal to ZFK ND minus WND, and this pi is taking into account both the production side of the firm and also the representative consumer side, because this is going to the representative consumer, because we have mentioned WNS. So, in case of firm, from the representative consumer side, this is the labor supply, from firm side this is the labor demand. So, this we are mentioning here WND. So, here it is looking like the same. Now, we will be working with the macro setup. So, micro foundations of macroeconomics that I mentioned about. Now, we will be trying to include these two agents in the macroeconomic setups and try to derive the macroeconomic inference. So, this is the ultimate objective of this course that we are trying to understand, apart from IS and LM framework that we always follow, and certain production system or the economic growth theories that we have to understand the macro setup. Now, a closed economy setup with only 3 agents in the economy. So, here we have the representative consumer, representative government, representative firm and the government. Now, government we have not defined, but government we can easily assume that this particular government, what is the role of this government, that this government collects tax T from the representative agent, and then this representative agent is paying the tax to the government, and government using this and taking as a lump sum tax. So, some amount of consumption good is being taken by the government, and this government will further be using for expenditure and those things. So, we are talking about the consumption and the government. So, government is whatever amount that the government is collecting from the representative consumer, it is also using for expenditure. So, here we have y is equal to C plus G that we have mentioned. So, C is the consumption and G is the government expenditure. So, here y that we are mentioning, it is nothing but ZFKN. So, here it is ZFKN is equal to C plus G that we are mentioning. So, here you have to think from the point of view of closed economy, that how closed economy functions. So, closed economy setup we have, that we are not at all interested right now in trying to add the I component, which is the investment. We are more interested in understanding y is equal to C plus G, and this is how it looks like. So, here we are talking about the distribution and welfare. So, once I have the role of the government, so government role we have not defined. So, role of the government would be that it will make sure that since the representative firm is hiring the representative consumer, so we have to make sure that whatever equilibrium that we achieve with the help of both representative consumer and the firm, whether the competitive equilibrium that we have achieved, whether it is appropriate or not. Can we also measure the efficiency, whether this is efficient or not. For that purpose, we will be also trying to introduce the concepts like welfare economics concept, distribution concept. We introduce the concept of economic efficiency, which is also directly linked with the Pareto optimality. So, Pareto optimality condition will be used. So, what happens when there is increase in government spending or total productivity? Can we measure the impact of tax distortion on wage income? What should be the size of the government? So, this is what we are also trying to mention. So, whatever we have assumed so far, how it is going to be used, we will be seeing that. So, what will be the modeling setup? Representative consumer, representative firm and the competitive equilibrium, and how does the model reacts, and what are the effects of change in government spending on total factor productivity. So, those things we will be mentioning about, and then also we will be trying to see that when we are saying that there is a tax imposed by the government, so how G is equal to T is looking like. So, labor market clear. So, labor market clearing condition will be seeing at those things. So, we have now assumed that y is equal to C plus G, where y is equal to Z F K N, and here we are saying about the closed economy. So, y is equal to C plus G. So, income expenditure identity that we have. So, we now start substituting it. So, we are now defining that this C represents the overall budget constraint or the consumption pattern of the economy. So, how many consumers are there. So, suppose 50,000 consumers are there in the economy. So, C represents the budget constraint of the all those representative consumers that we have assumed. So, this could be C is equal to W n plus pi minus T, and this we have assumed in the, you can pick it up when we had defined the representative consumer. So, C is equal to W n plus pi minus T. So, this is coming from here we had assumed, yes, here. So, here we had assumed, right. So, here we had C is equal to W n plus pi minus T. So, this is how the budget constraint is. So, here we are talking about the same part. So, here C is equal to W n plus pi minus T. Now, if you just superimpose substitute equation 2 to 6 into 7, then here it looks like this. So, C is equal to W n plus y, right. So, here we are saying about the pi, and pi we assumed here that pi profit function of this. So, we will be including same here. So, here and then T, the tax that this representative consumer is paying, it is nothing but it is equivalent to G, because government is not saving anything. Whatever it gets from the representative consumer, it uses for expenditure. So, that we are putting it here. So, imposing the conditions of equilibrium when N d is equal to N and T. So, here when you are just trying to, so at the equilibrium, when we are mentioning about equilibrium, so here we have labor market clears. So, demand for labor and supply for labor will be getting cleared here. So, plus minus, here you have plus, here minus, so this gets cancelled. So, once we have cancelling of these two, so what we are getting is nothing but C is equal to y minus G, which can be written as y is equal to C plus G. So, I think this simple exposition that I had shown you, I just discussed, this gives you a lot of idea about the macroeconomic picture. So, I hope from this slide it is clear that how are we trying to understand the macroeconomic picture with the foundations of microeconomics. So, here once we have y is equal to C plus G, so we are able to arrive at the closed economy model. What we did in this, we assumed two representative agents, one was the consumer and another was the firm, and these two representative agents, when we incorporated it here, so this pi that representative consumer had a dividend, we included as the production function, and then we at equilibrium we know that when labor market clears, demand supply will be equal. So, here we are just cancelling both. So, here we have to, it was Ns, it is Nd. So, this clears, and finally, we are having C is equal to y minus G and y is equal to C plus G. Now, this particular line, these charts are important, and these charts are important for three reasons. One is that it helps you understand that there are some new dimensions in the economy that we should be understanding. Second thing is that now the consumption, there will be explicit relationship between consumption and leisure that we have seen in case of consumer, but now the firm idea is also superimposed here. So, those superimpositions are playing very important role. So, here we have, so here is the production function that we have. So, this is the output that this economy is having. So, this is the production function. Given the labor input, this is the output that this production function is, this output is producing. Now, here we have the leisure. So, output as a function of leisure when we are mentioning, then this is how it looks like, and both have the same slope like a marginal productivity labor, but here it is downward sloping. So, here it is minus, right. Now, think about here. So, here what is that minus G, why we are assuming minus G? Because some amount of consumption has gone as a tax. So, government is taking away some amount of consumption. So, now you are starting from 0 0 here, this particular amount has gone as a tax. So, we are now more bothered about from D to B. So, this is the leisure L that you have. Now, given the scenario from D to B, this will be the area where this economy will be producing. So, this is represented by production possibility frontier. So, y minus G, this G is subtracted, so that is why it is in y minus G. So, this line that you have, this line is nothing but this shows about the production possibility, that how much the economy with the help of these agents in the economy with the help of representative consumer can produce, and how much firm can utilize these two. So these things are important to note, that how are we going to. So this talks about the production capacity of production possibilities. So production possibility, the slope of this is nothing but marginal rate of transformation that we mentioned, that how much there is a possibility of transforming one uh, output or input into another. So that we mention about here. So production possibilities is the marginal rate of substitution. So how much you can convert labor into consumption, leisure into consumption, and how much you have the transformation possibility of converting consumption into leisure. So this is what it talks about, because these two are the goods that we are examining. We have also mentioned from the consumer side. So the competitive equilibrium is the point where we try to see that there you have the equilibrium from all three sides. So marginal rate of substitution, leisure and consumption, is equal to marginal rate of transformation, that you have leisure and consumption, is equal to marginal product of labor. The moment I say marginal product of labor, then this speaks about. So marginal product of labor is coming from the firm side. This is the marginal rate of transformation, which is coming from the production side, that how much is the possibility that the representative agent will be deciding about, and how much the economy is having ability to convert the consumption into leisure. Marginal rate of substitution, leisure for consumption, is this point. So J is this. So production possibilities frontier is this. This is the competitive equilibrium. So here we have, so A, D, H, this is the condition that we always mention about. This is the J side and this is the C. So at this level, this is the consumption and this is the leisure that we have in this competitive equilibrium setup, and the J point also shows about the competitive equilibrium. So at this point, all these three are equivalent. So this is how we try to arrive it here. I will be stopping it here. In the next class, we will be talking about the, and in the next session we will be talking about the inference. But for you, the most critical part should be to understand this, that when we assumed the closed economy y is equal to C plus G, when we introduced the representative consumer, whatever we had assumed, and then we have now introduced the production, which means the form, the representative form, with these two playing a role, how are we deducting it and driving the closed economy setup y is equal to C plus D. Rest of the things are the static phenomena. So I will be taking up further from here and I will be mentioning it again, these cases, and then we will be going to the role of social planner and further. I will be stopping it here. Thank you. Thank you so much for your attention.